In 1990, Arkansas left the Southwest Conference for the SEC. Little did the world know that that singular move would kill the Texas heavy Southwest. However, Texas was also considered for that spot, but nothing really came of their meetings. But what if Texas decided to go in on ditching the Southwest to join an SEC more focused on brands post OU versus NCAA? How has college sports changed? Let's see. First, we need to establish where we are at in the college sports landscape. OU versus NCAA had just entered the modern era of college sports by stating that conferences could make their own deals and that the NCAA wasn't in control of that. That all happened in 1984. 3 years later, in 1987, the SMU death penalty happened. That whole situation just set the Southwest on fire, as Texas and Houston were also found to have scandals. Plus, they had voted against SMU's penalties. TCU also had a scandal, but whatever. The start appeared where SMU, Texas A&M, TCU, and Houston all faced penalties of several different degrees of punishment. Arkansas, Baylor, and Rice were the only schools without anything major going on. That whole thing was was Arkansas's excuse to leave for the SEC. Texas was also talking to the SEC. This is where everything changes. The Longhorns were pretty good by 1989, so they passed the success test. It would also give the SEC the entire state of Texas, which is a huge boost for the conference. Those are the two really good points. LSU also isn't too far away. Fun fact: LSU and Ole Miss were actually invited to the meeting that created the Southwest Conference in the first place, but they declined to join. Anyways, the Longhorns would be a nice member of the West Division. A certain college football creator actually made a video on the subject, so we have a pretty solid. I recommend that you watch his video either right now, if it returns my video or not, or after this video, but I still prefer that you watch past this point right here. Anyways, he makes a good point. South Carolina probably doesn't join the SEC in this timeline. Instead, we're looking at either Florida State or Miami. Let's look at the two. Florida State has the success brand and the large state going for them. Their weakest part is the whole Tallahassee media market, which is in the relatively weak panhandle of the state. They're on the Gulf side of Florida, so I guess they can have the Gulf part of the state, and Florida, their rivals, can have the ocean side of the state. On the other hand, Miami has the media market and state for them, but this was the early 90s, so all that success the Hurricanes had wasn't quite there yet. Let's say for this scenario that Florida State is chosen by the SEC. For simplicity's sake, I'm also going to assume that Miami still joins the Big East in 1991 and eventually leaves for the ACC. As for the Gamecocks, there's either joining the Big East with Miami or just rejoining the ACC. ACC might try to replace the spot that FSU had life with South Carolina, as the Gamecocks left in 1971 due to SAT minimums shaking up things, and basically South Carolina didn't like that. The Big Eight is perhaps the second most affected conference in this scenario. Texas being the Southwest's flagship, joining another conference most certainly causes the creation of the Big 12 and other conferences expand. The 12 happening much earlier due to the instability of the Southwest being more. Instead of the Big 12 launching in 1996, probably launches in 1992 or 93. Instead of Texas Tech, A&M, and Baylor joining, it's Arkansas, Texas A&M, Texas Tech, and Houston joining. Houston joining the Big 12 30 years earlier is only because the guy who pushed for Baylor's acceptance to the Big 12 was in office at the time. Rather, it was a Rice grad. It's fully possible that Baylor joins Conference USA in 1996 instead of Houston. This might be the scenario that Kansas State wins the 1996 national title. Without Texas dominating everything, the power of the conference is probably more scattered, which might make the Big 12 more chaotic. The SEC West would probably be anchored by Texas and Alabama, but which team would have the more championship appearances? This question is actually slightly simpler than you might think at first. Texas had a actually relatively weak division, as Tech, A&M, Baylor, TCU, Oklahoma, and Oklahoma State isn't necessarily the best lineup for a power conference division. Meanwhile, Alabama is in the SEC, which already says something. And in LSU, Ole Miss, and Auburn, when the schools are doing pretty good, and you have a pretty solid division. Sure, both teams had relatively weak teams in their division as well, but Texas just had more of those kinds of teams. So anyways, that was my first video on this channel. I'd love to get your guys' feedback on this because I've only done this kind of video before. So